I never thought the last moment of my life would feel so ordinary. But what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about the world and what's coming for all of us. The morning had started like any other. My name is Rachel, and at 35, I thought I had most of my life figured out, or at least enough to get by. I spent my days in front of a screen, balancing a dozen deadlines as a freelance graphic designer. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Spiritually, though, I was running on empty. I'd grown up in a religious household, Sunday mornings spent in pews, hands folded in prayer, hymns filling the air. But as I got older, life chipped away at that faith. Hardships piled up, a failed relationship, the loss of a close friend, financial struggles. I began to wonder if God had forgotten me, or if he was ever there at all. That Tuesday felt like just another chaotic day. My inbox was overflowing with urgent emails, the client revisions seemed endless, and the laundry I swore I'd do on Sunday was still sitting in a heap. By 4 p.m, I was running on coffee fumes and a granola bar. As I stepped out to grab some groceries, my mind was racing with to-do lists. I barely noticed the cool breeze of autumn on my face or the leaves crunching underfoot. The hum of city life buzzed around me, honking cars, distant chatter, the faint wail of a siren. And then, everything changed in an instant. If you're watching this video, trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. What I saw will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about life, death, and what's coming in the near future. So, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay till the end. You won't want to miss a single detail of what I'm about to share. I remember the sound first, a deafening screech of tires and a horn blaring so loud it made my heart skip. Time seemed to slow as I turned my head, just in time to see the car barreling toward me. The world spun, and then there was nothing but blackness. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't on the pavement. I wasn't anywhere I recognized. But there, a few feet away, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My body, lying still and lifeless. As I stared at my body lying on the pavement, a strange calmness swept over me. It wasn't panic or fear. It was something else entirely. I wasn't cold. I wasn't in pain. In fact, I didn't feel my body at all. It was as if I had shed it like an old coat. Everything around me seemed muted, almost dream-like. The noise of the city, the horns, the sirens, the murmur of voices faded into a soft hum. I was weightless, untethered, yet somehow aware of everything. Time didn't feel like it mattered anymore. Then I noticed the light. It started as a faint glow in the distance, just barely visible, like the first rays of sunrise breaking through a dark sky. But it grew stronger, brighter, warmer. I felt myself drawn to it, not by force, but by an overwhelming sense of peace. I floated, yes, floated, toward the light. There was no ground beneath me, no air rushing past, just a gentle pull that I couldn't resist. I felt lighter with every passing moment, like all the weight I'd been carrying, stress, regret, fear, was melting away. And then I entered it. It wasn't like anything I could compare to on Earth. It wasn't just light. It was warmth, love, and comfort, all wrapped together. Imagine the safest place you've ever been, the kindest embrace you've ever felt, and the purest joy you've ever known. That's what it was like. But as peaceful as it felt, I couldn't help but wonder, where am I? What's happening to me? Before I could form an answer, I noticed someone standing in the light. At first, I thought it might be a trick of my imagination. The figure was hazy, shimmering like sunlight on water. But as I moved closer, the shape became clearer, more distinct. It was a woman. Her face came into focus slowly, but when it did, my heart nearly stopped. If that's even possible in a place like this. It was my grandmother. I hadn't seen her in nearly 20 years, not since she passed away when I was a teenager. But there she was, looking just as I remembered her. Kind eyes, soft smile, her favourite floral dress swaying lightly as though caught in a gentle breeze. "Rachel," she said, her voice as familiar as ever. Tears welled up in my eyes, not from sadness, but from a joy so profound it left me speechless. I wanted to run to her, to throw my arms around her, but my body, or whatever form I was in, didn't seem to work that way. I could feel her warmth, though, even from a distance. "Grandma?" I whispered, my voice trembling. She nodded, her smile widening. "It's me, sweetheart." "How?" My words faltered. "How are you here? How am I here?" She stepped closer, her presence radiating a calm that steadied me. "You've been brought here to see something very important," she said gently. "There are things you need to know." Her words filled me with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. I wanted to ask her 1,000 questions, but before I could, she held out her hand. "Come with me," she said. I hesitated, glancing back at the world I had just left behind. It was still there, faint and distant, like a fading memory. Part of me wanted to cling to it, to run back and shout, "Wait, I'm not ready to leave." But the light around me and my grandmother's presence felt too inviting to resist. When I took her hand, I expected it to feel like it did when I was a child, warm, firm, a little rough from years of baking and gardening. But it wasn't like that. Her touch was softer, almost like it wasn't physical at all, but emotional. It was as though her love itself was holding me. As we moved forward, the light seemed to shift around us. It wasn't just bright, it was alive. It pulsed and shimmered, and I could almost hear it humming softly, like a song without words. I turned to my grandmother. "Where are we going?" She looked at me with an expression that was both tender and serious. "To a place where you'll understand." Her answer both comforted and unnerved me. I couldn't explain why, but I felt that whatever I was about to see would change me forever. The light grew stronger, enveloping us completely. I couldn't tell if we were moving or if the world was moving around us, but it didn't matter. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And yet, deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The light around us shifted again, and I felt a pull, gentle but firm, drawing me forward. My grandmother's hand remained in mine, her presence steadying me. I had no idea where we were going or what I was about to see, but I trusted her completely. As we moved, the light began to change. It wasn't just white anymore. It was alive with colours that seemed to defy description. They weren't the reds, blues, or greens I was used to, but hues that seemed to carry emotion, even meaning. They pulsed and swirled, and as I watched, I felt as though they were trying to tell me something. Then, everything shifted. The light dimmed slightly, and before me appeared something so vast and breathtaking that I could only stare in awe. It was Earth. Not the Earth I knew, though. This wasn't the bustling, noisy, chaotic planet I'd left behind. This was a view from above, far above, as if I were seeing it through the eyes of the divine. The planet hung in the expanse of space, glowing softly, its blue oceans and green continents shimmering with an otherworldly beauty. But as I gazed at it, I noticed something unusual. Across the surface of the Earth, a faint line of light was beginning to form, circling the globe like a delicate ribbon. It wasn't steady. It flickered and pulsed, growing brighter in some places and dimmer in others. "What is that?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. My grandmother didn't answer right away. She stood beside me, her expression calm but serious. "Look closer," she said gently. I focused on the line of light, and as I did, it began to shift. It wasn't just a line. It was a timeline. Images began to emerge along its path, each one glowing softly, like scenes from a film. The first image was of the sky. At first, it seemed normal, blue and endless, with a few wispy clouds. But then I noticed something strange. The clouds darkened, turning a deep crimson, as if soaked in blood. The sky itself began to shift, taking on an eerie, otherworldly hue. Stars appeared, brighter and larger than I'd ever seen, and then, in the distance, a massive comet streaked across the heavens, its tail blazing like fire. I felt a shiver run through me. What does it mean? My grandmother's voice was calm, but carried a weight that made my heart sink. "These are the signs," she said. "The signs that will mark the beginning." The scene shifted again, and now I saw the earth itself. The land was trembling, earthquakes ripping through cities, mountains crumbling into the sea. Floods surged over coastal towns, sweeping away homes and lives in an instant. Fires raged across forests, their smoke rising into the sky like a dark curtain. I could feel the devastation, the chaos, as if I were standing in the midst of it. It wasn't just the physical destruction. It was the fear, the confusion, the sense of helplessness that swept through the people experiencing it. I turned to my grandmother, my voice shaking. "Why is this happening? Can it be stopped?" She looked at me with an expression of deep compassion. "It cannot be stopped," she said softly. "But it can be shaped." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Before I could ask her what she meant, the timeline shifted again. This time, the images weren't of destruction. They were of people. I saw crowds gathering in fields and city squares, their faces turned toward the heavens. Some were praying, their expressions filled with hope and reverence. Others were weeping, overwhelmed by what they were witnessing. But not everyone was drawn to the light. In other parts of the world, I saw people turning away, their faces hardened with anger or fear. Some lashed out, blaming others for the chaos. Others retreated into themselves, shutting out the world around them. "It's a choice," my grandmother said, her voice breaking the silence. "Each person will choose how they respond. Some will turn to the light, to faith. Others will turn away." I felt a lump in my throat as I watched the scenes unfold. The joy and hope of those who embraced the light were palpable, but so was the despair of those who rejected it. It was as if the world was being split into two, the divide growing wider with each passing moment. Finally, the timeline stopped shifting, and I saw the ribbon of light that encircled the earth begin to pulse. It grew brighter, its glow spreading outward, touching every corner of the globe. "This is the countdown," my grandmother said, her voice filled with both urgency and hope. 30 days. That's all that remains." I turned to her, my heart pounding. 30 days until what? She met my gaze, her eyes filled with a wisdom that seemed beyond human comprehension. "Until he returns." Her words sent a shiver through me, but before I could respond, the scene around us began to change once more. The ribbon of light faded, the earth slipping into the distance, and I felt that familiar pull again, drawing me forward into the unknown. The pull of the light carried me forward again, and the earth slowly faded into the distance. I didn't know what would come next, but I could feel my heart pounding, if I still had a heart in this strange, weightless state. My grandmother stayed beside me, her presence steady and calming, but her expression had shifted. There was a seriousness in her eyes now, one that made me brace for what I might see. When the light around us began to shift again, I found myself in a new vision, one that was far more personal and immediate than the cosmic view of Earth I'd just witnessed. I was no longer looking at the planet from above. Now, I was on the ground. Or at least, I felt as though I was. Around me were scenes of life during the 30-day countdown, vivid and stark in their contrasts. At first, I saw beauty. Communities of people were coming together in ways that brought tears to my eyes. Neighbours who had barely spoken before were now sharing food, offering shelter, and comforting one another. In one scene, I saw a man building a fire in a town square as others gathered around, sharing blankets and singing songs of hope. In another, I watched a young girl stand outside a grocery store, holding a sign that read, "Take what you need." She had set up a small table with canned goods, bread, and water bottles. People approached her cautiously at first, but soon they began to take her up on her offer, some even leaving behind what little they had to help others. It was beautiful. It was hopeful. And for a moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, things might be okay. But the vision shifted again, and the scenes that followed made my stomach turn. I saw acts of betrayal, greed, and cruelty that were hard to watch. In one place, a group of people blocked off a street, hoarding supplies and turning away those who begged for help. Their faces were hard and unyielding, their eyes filled with fear and mistrust. In another, I saw a man in a business suit standing on the steps of a grand building, shouting promises of safety and salvation to a desperate crowd. But behind him, I could see the truth. Stockpiles of food and resources hidden away for his own benefit, guarded by men with guns. The contrast was staggering. For every act of kindness, there seemed to be an equal and opposite act of selfishness. For every person reaching out a hand to help, there was someone else using theirs to take. I turned to my grandmother, my voice trembling. "Why are you showing me this? Why does it have to be this way?" She looked at me with deep compassion. "Because this is the choice humanity faces," she said softly. "In times of great trial, the best and worst of people are revealed. Every act, whether it's one of love or one of selfishness, creates ripples." "Ripples?" I asked, unsure of what she meant. She nodded. "Imagine throwing a pebble into a pond. The ripples spread out, touching everything in their path. It's the same with our actions. Every choice we make, every word we speak, every moment of kindness or cruelty. It all creates ripples that affect the people around us, and those ripples keep spreading." I thought about the scenes I had just witnessed. The girl with the sign, the man hoarding supplies. The choices they made didn't just affect them. They impacted everyone around them. The kindness of one could inspire others, while the greed of another could spread fear and division. "Is that why you brought me here?" I asked. "To see how much our choices matter?" My grandmother's expression softened. "Partly," she said, "but it's more than that. You needed to understand how connected we all are. Every soul on earth is linked, Rachel. What one does, the others feel. That's the beauty and the burden of free will." The weight of her words settled over me like a heavy blanket. I had always thought of my actions as mine alone, my choices as personal decisions that affected only me. But now I could see how wrong I had been. The vision shifted again, and I saw more ripples, this time on a grander scale. A single act of kindness in one part of the world sparked a chain reaction, inspiring others to do the same. Communities that had been fractured by fear began to heal, their bonds growing stronger with every act of love. But I also saw how a single act of betrayal or cruelty could spread just as easily. It created division, mistrust, and despair, setting off a chain reaction that fractured communities and isolated people from one another. I turned back to my grandmother, my voice barely a whisper. "So, what happens in these 30 days? It's all up to us." She nodded, her gaze steady. It always has been. Her words echoed in my mind as the vision began to fade, the light around us shifting once more. I didn't know where we were going next, but I could feel the weight of what I'd just seen pressing on my soul. For the first time since this journey began, I truly understood the power of free will and the responsibility that came with it. The warmth around me intensified as the scene shifted once again, and for a brief moment I thought I might be pulled back into the light of the Earth's distant view. But this time, something different awaited me. The air, or whatever it was in this place, felt lighter, almost as if I were floating. I felt weightless, untethered from the world I once knew, and yet, somehow, completely at peace. When I looked around, I was no longer in the place of uncertainty and visions. Instead, I was standing in a breathtaking realm, one that seemed beyond the confines of human imagination. It was as though I had entered a place that existed beyond time itself, a realm of beauty, peace, and serenity. The skies were an endless shade of deep blue, and the air shimmered with light. The ground beneath me was soft, like the petals of 1,000 flowers, but without the need for shoes. The atmosphere felt so pure, so perfect, that I could barely comprehend it. It wasn't just beautiful, it was perfect. Every colour, every sound, every sensation seemed to vibrate with a kind of divine harmony. I turned, and that's when I saw them. Souls. Souls that radiated light. They weren't just figures or forms. They glowed with an inner brilliance that seemed to emanate from the very core of their being. Some of them were sitting in peaceful groups, their expressions serene and joyful, while others were walking together, conversing in voices so soft and full of love that they could have been the very whispers of heaven itself. As I moved through this heavenly realm, I felt the sense of tranquility and bliss intensify. It was as if I had been transported to a place where only love and joy existed. And then, to my astonishment, I began to see faces I recognized. There, standing in the middle of a group of souls, was my father. The father I had lost when I was just a little girl, his face illuminated by a gentle glow. He was laughing with someone else I didn't immediately recognize, but the warmth between them was palpable. My heart swelled in my chest as I watched him, and a surge of love filled my being, almost as though I were standing beside him. "Dad?" I whispered, hardly daring to believe my eyes. But before I could say more, a figure stepped forward from the crowd. It was a woman I knew well, my aunt, who had passed away only a few years ago. She smiled at me, and as our eyes met, I felt a profound sense of recognition. This was no dream. This was real. "You're here," she said, her voice soft, and yet it echoed with a certainty that resonated deep within me. "You've been brought here for a reason, Rachel." Tears filled my eyes, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of peace. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be, surrounded by those I had loved and lost. I could feel their love, their joy, their presence, and for a moment, I forgot all the pain I had carried on earth. But as much as I wanted to remain in this heavenly realm, there was a pull, a sensation that urged me to keep moving, to see more. And so, reluctantly, I turned away from the gathering of light and continued to follow the path laid out before me. That's when I saw it. Another realm, but this one was starkly different. The light faded, replaced by darkness so thick it was as if the air itself had turned cold. The ground beneath me seemed to shift, as though it were made of jagged rocks that cut into my soul, and the atmosphere was heavy with despair. I could hear cries, soft at first, like distant whispers, but as I moved deeper into this place, the cries grew louder, more desperate. I saw shadows, figures, moving through the dark. Their faces were twisted with pain and sorrow, their eyes hollow, as though they had been drained of all hope. "Where am I?" I gasped, my voice trembling. "What is this place?" "This is the realm of choices," my grandmother's voice answered, though she was nowhere to be seen. "This is the consequence of choices made on earth." I turned, my heart tightening with a mix of sorrow and fear. And there, amidst the shadows, I saw someone I recognized. It was a man I had known during my time on earth, a man who had never believed in God, who lived for himself, selfishly and without regard for others. He had mocked faith, ridiculed those who believed, and lived a life driven by greed and desire. Now, in this realm, he was surrounded by darkness. His face was contorted in anguish, his hands outstretched as though reaching for something, anything, but finding nothing. He cried out in despair, but no one came. He was alone. I felt a deep pang of sorrow for him, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel the truth of what I was witnessing. This wasn't a punishment. It was the natural consequence of his choices. The choices he made in life had led him here, to a place of isolation, torment, and despair. I wanted to reach out to him, to comfort him, but I knew I couldn't. This was not my place to intervene. It was his journey, shaped by the choices he had made. "This is not about punishment," my grandmother's voice echoed once again. "This is the consequence of free will. Every soul chooses their path. And when the end comes, it is not God who condemns them. It is the choices they have made that lead them here." I turned back to the dark realm, my heart heavy with the weight of what I had seen. I understood now. The beauty of heaven, the suffering of hell. They were not arbitrary. They were not punishments meted out by a wrathful God. They were the natural, inevitable results of the choices people made in life. As I stood there, the darkness pressing in, I felt a profound shift within myself. I understood the weight of every decision, the impact of every action, every word. And with that understanding, I knew the journey was far from over. I wasn't sure how much more of this journey I could bear. The beauty of the heavenly realm had touched me deeply, but the dark, suffocating weight of the other realm haunted me. The visions I had witnessed, the pain, the sorrow, and the consequences of choices made were enough to overwhelm anyone. I felt a heaviness in my chest, like I was carrying the weight of the entire world, all the pain and suffering that had been displayed to me. But as the darkness began to close in, I felt the familiar warmth return. The same warmth that had enveloped me in the beginning. This time, though, it was different. It was more than just light. It was a presence so filled with love, so overflowing with compassion, that I couldn't help but feel my heart flutter with both recognition and awe. A figure stepped forward from the light. I had known he was coming. Even before I saw him, I felt the shift in the air, the palpable sense that I was standing in the presence of someone extraordinary. It was him, Jesus. His form radiated a brilliance that I could hardly look at, yet I didn't need to. His presence was soothing, like a balm for a wound I didn't know I had. He was real, more real than anything I had ever known on earth. He wasn't just a figure of history. He was here, with me, right now. His eyes, deep and knowing, met mine, and in that single glance, I felt everything. Every question I had ever asked, every doubt I had ever struggled with, every pain I had carried, they all dissolved in his gaze. It was as though he could see into the very core of my being, and instead of judgment or disappointment, I felt only understanding, a deep, overwhelming understanding. "Rachel," he said, his voice calm, yet filled with a power that made the very air tremble. His voice was like a melody, comforting and full of life. You are here because you were meant to be. There is purpose in your life, even now. Tears welled up in my eyes. I had never heard my name spoken with such tenderness. For so long, I had felt lost. I had wandered through life, questioning my faith, questioning everything I had been taught. But in his presence, all of that confusion faded. I felt at peace, like I had come home. "You've shown me so much," I whispered, barely able to control the emotion in my voice. "The beauty, the darkness, the choices we make. What does it all mean? What am I supposed to do with this?" Jesus smiled, a smile so gentle and filled with compassion that it made my heart ache. "You are here to witness this because you have been chosen," he said softly. "The 30-day countdown is not just a time of judgment, but a time of redemption. It is a time where the world will feel the weight of their choices and understand the gravity of their actions. But it is also a time for hope, for healing. For redemption, I absorbed his words, trying to process everything he was saying. The countdown, the choices, the consequences. It was all so much bigger than I had ever imagined. "Why me?" I asked, my voice shaky. "I'm just ordinary. I'm not special. I've struggled with my faith. I've questioned everything." Jesus stepped closer, his presence enveloping me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of comfort. "Rachel, it is because of your struggles that you are here. It is because you have questioned, because you have searched for meaning in the midst of pain, that you are able to share this message with others. Your life still has a purpose. You will bring hope to many who are lost. You will show them that it is never too late." I took a shaky breath, trying to steady myself as I absorbed the magnitude of his words. I had spent so much of my life feeling disconnected, uncertain, and spiritually adrift. But now, standing before Jesus, I began to understand. My purpose wasn't lost. It had always been there, waiting for me to see it. "But what can I do?" I asked, still not fully understanding how someone like me could make a difference. "How can I help?" He looked at me with an expression that held both love and wisdom. "By sharing what you have seen, by speaking the truth of these days and of what lies ahead. Many will be uncertain, lost in fear and doubt. But you will give them hope. You will show them that there is more than just judgment. There is always the chance for redemption." I nodded slowly, trying to take it all in. I could feel the weight of the responsibility he was giving me, but I also felt the hope that he was offering. It wasn't just about the 30 days, or the chaos, or the choices. It was about what came after. It was about showing the world that even in the darkest of times, there was still light. There was still hope. "Don't be afraid, Rachel," he said gently. "I am with you. I always have been, and I will guide you as you share this message." I could feel the truth of his words in my very being. This wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. It was about the choices we made, the lives we touched, and the hope we carried. And then, as he stood before me, his presence filled me with peace. A peace that was deeper than anything I had ever known. I knew that my life, my purpose, was not just about the past or the struggles I had faced. It was about the future, the hope that I could help bring to others. With a final, loving smile, Jesus spoke one last time. "Go and share what you have seen. There is urgency in these days. The time is coming. But remember, I am always with you." And just like that, his presence began to fade, the light surrounding him growing brighter until I could no longer see him. But even as he disappeared, his peace remained, filling every corner of my being. I stood there, surrounded by light, filled with a sense of purpose that I had never known before. The journey wasn't over, it was just beginning. The warmth and peace surrounding me felt like the embrace of a mother, a love so all-encompassing that I didn't want to let go of it. Everything I had seen and felt, the light, the calm, the understanding, had opened my heart in ways I could never have imagined. I had witnessed what lay beyond, and for a brief moment, I could have stayed. The peace here was overwhelming, like nothing I had ever known on earth. It was a place of healing, of love, and of purpose that was clearer than anything I'd experienced in my life. But then, as the last traces of Jesus' presence began to fade, something else lingered, something that pulled at my heart. It was a question, soft yet urgent, that seemed to echo within me. Would I stay here, in this place of perfect peace, or would I return to the world I had left behind? For the first time in my life, I was faced with a choice that didn't seem as simple as black and white. The thought of remaining in this heavenly realm was tempting. It was so easy to imagine staying here forever, in a place where there was no pain, no struggle, no fear. I could rest. I could find peace. My heart longed for it, and every part of me ached at the thought of returning to the harshness of the world I had known. But then, something shifted inside me. I thought about my life on earth, the relationships I had, the people I loved, the people who still needed to hear the message I had witnessed. The faces of my family and friends came to mind. I thought about the struggles I had faced, the doubts that had nearly drowned me, and how, despite it all, I had found a way to keep moving forward. I wasn't just here for myself, I was here for them too. And then, the vision of the world, just as I had seen it, flashed before me again. The 30-day countdown, the chaos, the signs in the sky, the mass awakening, but also the fear and division. I realized that my time in this peaceful place was not the end of my journey. It was merely a brief moment of clarity, a moment of understanding that would empower me to fulfill my purpose. I could not just stay here in peace when I knew that the world, my world, still needed hope. I could feel it, deep within my soul. There was something that called me back, something that urged me to share what I had seen, what I had learned. The message was bigger than my fear. It was bigger than my comfort. It was a responsibility, a gift I had to honor. And so, as much as my heart yearned to remain, I knew my path was not here. My path was still on earth. I closed my eyes for a moment, gathering my thoughts, preparing for what I knew would be a difficult decision. The peace around me was still so profound, and I couldn't help but think about how easy it would be to simply stay here, to let go of the world I had once known. But then, as if reading my thoughts, I heard a voice. Not just any voice, but the voice I had already heard. The same gentle, soothing voice that had reassured me in this realm. Rachel, Jesus spoke softly, his words filled with warmth and compassion. It is not time for you to remain. There is still much for you to do. I felt my heart stir as I listened to him. I had never felt so understood, so seen. But why me? I asked. Why must I go back? I've seen the peace here. I've felt the love. I don't want to leave it. Jesus' presence filled the space around me, and his voice was like a soft breeze, comforting and steady. You are not leaving peace behind. Peace will be with you, Rachel. I will be with you. You must go back to share the message you've received, to bring light to those who are in the dark. The words sank into my soul, and a sense of purpose filled me. He was right. I couldn't deny it. My purpose was not to remain in a place of eternal peace, but to carry that peace into the chaos of the world. to give others the chance to experience the same love and understanding I had been shown. The 30 days, the countdown. They were not just an event, they were a call to action, a call to awaken the world to the truth of what was coming. I understand, I whispered, though my voice trembled with the weight of the decision. You will not be alone, Rachel, he said, his words filled with a tenderness that wrapped around me like a blanket. I will be with you every step of the way. You are never alone. The phrase echoed in my heart. You are never alone. In that moment, I knew it wasn't just a comforting sentiment, it was the truth. No matter what challenges lay ahead, no matter the difficulty of returning to a world filled with uncertainty and fear, I would never be alone. He would be with me. His presence would guide me. I wasn't meant to carry this burden on my own. As the decision settled deep within me, I began to feel the pull, like the soft tug of a familiar thread drawing me back. I had made my choice. I was ready to return. I couldn't ignore the call any longer. Go now, Jesus spoke gently. And remember, love is your guide. Hope is your gift. And I am always with you. With those words, the light around me brightened and the peace of this place began to fade. I took one last look at the realm that had offered me solace, but I knew that I had a mission to complete. The world needed the truth, the hope, and the peace that had been shared with me, and as the light pulled me back, I felt a profound sense of strength and purpose within me. I was going back, not as the woman I had once been, uncertain and questioning, but as someone with a clear mission, ready to share the message that would awaken hearts and change lives. I woke up with a start, my heart racing. For a moment, I thought I was still in the other place, surrounded by light and peace. But then, as the haze cleared, I realized I was no longer floating in that serene realm. I was lying in a hospital bed, the sterile scent of the room mingling with the soft beeping of machines beside me. My body felt heavy, as though it had been asleep for a lifetime. And then I saw them. My family, standing around my bed, their faces a mixture of relief, confusion, and concern. I blinked a few times, trying to focus. Rachel, you're awake, my mother said, her voice trembling. She reached for my hand, her fingers warm and familiar. You've been in a coma for 3 days. We didn't know if you'd make it. A part of me could hardly believe I was back. I had just been in the presence of Jesus. I had seen the future, the signs that were to come, the consequences of humanity's choices. I had witnessed heaven and hell, and I had stood in front of Jesus himself, being told that I still had a purpose on earth. And now, here I was, back in this fragile body, in this world that felt both familiar and foreign at the same time. I sat up slowly, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. My family kept asking questions, but my mind was racing with 1,000 thoughts. How could I explain everything I had seen? How could I put into words the enormity of what had been shown to me? For the first few hours, I could barely speak. The experience was so overwhelming that I didn't even know where to begin. How could I share something so profound, something that felt like it couldn't possibly be understood by anyone who hadn't experienced it? My family had no way of knowing what I just witnessed. How could they? But then, as the days passed, something stirred inside me. I had been given a mission, a purpose. The message that I had received wasn't for me alone. It was for everyone. I couldn't keep it to myself. I had to share it. I started with small words, simple phrases. I told them about the warmth, the light, and the peace I had felt. I told them about the countdown, the vision of the 30 days that were coming, and the chaos and the hope that would unfold. At first, they listened in silence, their eyes wide with disbelief, their faces filled with concern. My mother, always so grounded in logic, asked if I was sure I hadn't been hallucinating. My brother just shook his head, not sure whether to believe me or think I had lost my mind. But as I continued to speak, as the words flowed more easily from my lips, something shifted. They began to listen. Not just with their ears, but with their hearts. They saw the sincerity in my eyes, the certainty in my voice. I wasn't just telling them a story. I was sharing the truth of what I had seen, the urgency of what was to come. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was truly speaking with purpose. Still, there were those who doubted. Some friends and family members shrugged it off as a dream, a product of my near-death experience. Others just listened politely, but made it clear they weren't ready to embrace the possibility of what I had seen. Skepticism was natural. It was hard to believe. I knew that. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that I had seen the signs, the countdown, and the urgency of the days ahead. I continued to speak, slowly at first, but then with more confidence. I talked about the importance of the choices we make and how humanity's actions in these final days would shape everything. I shared the message that I had been given, that we could still find hope, still find redemption, if we chose to turn toward faith. The 30 days were coming, and we had the power to decide what that time would look like. As the days turned into weeks, I felt a strange peace settling over me. The fear and uncertainty I had once carried were replaced by a deep, unshakable sense of purpose. I knew that I'd been given this vision for a reason, to share it with others, to help them understand the significance of these times. There were still moments of doubt, of course, moments when I questioned if I was truly capable of carrying this message, moments when I wondered if anyone would listen. But deep down, I knew this was my mission. And with that knowledge, the doubts began to fade. Now, as I sit here, reflecting on everything I've experienced, I feel an overwhelming sense of urgency. The world is changing, and time is running out. The 30-day countdown is real, and it's coming whether we're ready for it or not. I can't ignore it, and neither can you. So, I'm here to tell you, prepare your heart. Turn toward the light, embrace the hope, and understand that we are all connected. The choices we make, the love we share, and the faith we hold, it all matters. The time is near, and we have the power to shape what comes next. You are never alone, just as I was never alone. And as we approach these final days, know that there is always a chance for redemption, always a chance for hope. I can't wait to see what the next 30 days will bring.